Some marriages don't begin with love, but with a bet. She, mocked by the world for her appearance. He, a cold millionaire who believed everything, even people, had a price. Yet within what seemed like a meaningless game, they found themselves on a path no one could predict, a journey where true love is tested by forgiveness, dignity, and the unseen depths of the human heart. This is not just a love story, it's the story of a heart awakening. He married her, just because of a bet. Not for love, not for emotion, simply to win a game among a group of wealthy men in tailored suits, eager to prove their dominance by turning others into a laughingstock. The wedding was held in a 5-star hotel in the heart of the city. Crystal chandeliers sparkled like falling stars, and the expensive wine glasses were overshadowed by judgmental glances before they could even be sipped. The bride, standing beside him, wore an oversized wedding dress. Her wrists bore the marks of old calluses from years of labor. Her face was round, bare, and real, so real that the entire hall seemed to ripple with a restrained, awkward chuckle. No one knew that this bizarre marriage would become the turning point in a millionaire's life. And that wedding night, seemingly a cruel joke, would be the very moment that brought him to his knees, not out of love, but out of regret, because the woman he once looked down upon would be the one he could never forget for the rest of his life. If anyone had ever asked Clara whether she believed in fairy tales, she would have smiled, shaken her head, and turned away in silence. She was born in a small village nearly 100 kilometers from the city, where the crowing of roosters, the squeaky bicycles, and her mother's weary sighs were the sounds that colored her childhood. Clara's mother used to be a seamstress for elegant city women, but after a train accident, she lost one leg and became wheelchair-bound, living quietly in an old wooden house. Clara grew up under the light of oil lamps, in the shaky breaths of her mother whenever the cold winds blew, and amid the whispers at the market that stabbed like needles. That girl's all grown up. But no one would ever want her. Clara was not beautiful. She had accepted that very early in life. Her face was round, her nose a little flat, her skin sun-kissed, her body heavy due to genetics and poor nutrition. But her eyes, they were different, deep and quiet like a forest lake, where people might see themselves reflected if they dared to look. Clara never argued with anyone, nor did she complain. She learned to sew from her mother, then opened a small roadside stall at the district market, mending clothes for the hurried day after day. People didn't remember her name, but they did remember the plain girl in old-fashioned clothes who always smiled but wasn't pretty at all. Daniel Kingsley was the complete opposite of Clara. Born into a prestigious family as the only son of a media conglomerate, Daniel grew up under stage lights, showered with praise and expectations. He was tall, sharp, with a magazine-cut smile that could make any girl blush. But it was that very appearance and wealth that gradually trapped Daniel in his own shadow. Yes, he was intelligent, but he was cold, because from a young age, he had learned one thing. In the elite world of the rich, emotions were luxury. Everything had a price. Even people. Daniel had been in love once, or at least he thought he had. She was a famous model, dreamy and sharp as a knife. But she betrayed him with his best friend, who also happened to be the second largest shareholder in his family's company. After the scandal, Daniel locked himself away in a mansion, living day to day with business deals, luxury cars, and the meaningless jokes of his rich boy friends, men who no longer believed in anything but money and power. The story began one night at a party, a birthday bash for one of their circle, where wine flowed like water. Music throbbed with mocking laughter, and every conversation seemed designed to fill the emptiness of their overly abundant lives. "Daniel, are you still hung up on that model chick? Come on, I dare you to marry someone no one else would dare to touch." "Just for fun." Daniel smirked. "What do you mean? Marry the ugliest girl you can find. But it's gotta be real, legal marriage. In front of everyone. If you do it, we'll give you $2 million. If not, you lose. You in?" He paused. The whole table burst out laughing, expecting him to wave it off. But he nodded, slowly, confidently, challengingly. "I'm in." And that was when Clara entered his story. Daniel drove out to the countryside, treating it like a spontaneous getaway, in a simple tracksuit and baseball cap pulled low. He looked nothing like a CEO of a multi-million-dollar corporation. He stopped at a roadside sewing shop because a button had popped off his shirt. And there she was, Clara, standing with a smile, inviting him in, her voice soft and eyes unwavering. He didn't see an ugly woman. He saw a plain face. Incredibly plain. Perfect for winning a bet. Do you think you deserve to be loved? Clara looked up, stunned. She had never been asked that. Then she smiled gently, tilting her head. I think, if love really exists, then who deserves it or not isn't for us to decide. It was the first time he'd met someone who didn't try to be cute. And also the moment Daniel knew, this bet might be easier than he thought. Daniel came back a second time. Then a third. Then he confessed his love. Then proposed. Clara was shocked. She didn't believe it at first. But after many conversations, his gaze never wavered. He was gentle, witty, chivalrous. In a way no one had ever treated her. Clara's mother was worried. A man like him, why would he be interested in you? She smiled. Maybe, I'm lucky. For the first time, Daniel took care of everything for the wedding, the outfits, the venue, the invitations, yet never let Clara be involved in the planning. He said it was a surprise just for you. And Clara, who had never even dreamed of a fairy tale wedding, didn't think too much of it. The wedding looked like a dream, at least to those who didn't know the truth. The bride stood quietly, lips trembling, but eyes glowing. The groom smiled politely, just like always, but no one noticed the quick glances toward his group of friends in the front row, winking, smirking, like actors in a play that had been rehearsed for months. Daniel never thought he'd feel guilty, but when Clara walked down the aisle, holding the small bouquet she'd chosen herself, her dress not the fanciest, but perfectly fitted, he suddenly wanted to stop. But the wedding had begun. The clapping, the music, the fake cheers, everything swept him along, and pushed Clara into a tragedy she never saw coming. The conflict began silently, within the groom himself. Daniel hadn't expected to feel pity, just a little. Then he reminded himself, this was just a game, a bet. She'd get the post-wedding payout. She'd live better, and he would win. Clara, on the other hand, suspected nothing. She believed in him, not because of sweet words, but because his eyes didn't carry judgment, something she had never seen in any man before. But no one knew, love is the hardest thing to control. And the cruelest when turned into a joke. Daniel didn't realize it, but as the wedding day neared, his heart grew heavier, and Clara began to dream of a life she thought she never deserved. A life with that man. A real family. It was late at night. The city had already fallen asleep, its last echoes fading with the clinking glasses of high-end bars. On the top floor of a five-star hotel, in the honeymoon suite, Clara sat alone in front of the mirror, lightly applying lipstick. Her powder-caked face could only partly hide the trembling in her eyes. Daniel hadn't come up yet. He was still downstairs, sitting at the hotel bar with his friends. The group was still buzzing with crude laughter, celebrating their victory. Top of the game. Man, I can't believe Daniel actually married that chick, one of his friends snorted with laughter. Daniel forced a dry smile, sipping his drink, unsure how to respond. Inside him, something stirred, like every laugh pressed harder on a guilt he didn't yet know how to name. Up in the room, Clara waited. The lights were dimmed. The soft tap-tap of light rain kissed the glass windows. She wore no extravagant makeup, just a thin robe, her hair still damp from the hurried ceremony. She believed this night marked the beginning of love, but Daniel saw it only as the conclusion of a bet. When he finally stepped into the room, Clara was asleep in the chair. He stopped to look at her. There was no pretending in her face, no fake flirtation in her sleep. He stepped closer, gently pulled a blanket over her shoulders, and walked out onto the balcony. It felt like a curse. He stood there, beside the only woman who hadn't tried to manipulate, seduce, or demand anything from him. A woman like Clara didn't belong in a world where people sold themselves for $2 million. Before sunrise, Clara had already awakened. She walked down to the hotel lobby to buy some porridge for Daniel's mother, who was recovering in the hospital after a minor stroke. No one from Daniel's family had bothered to visit. Only Clara came. Every single day, quietly and without fuss. As she passed through the hallway, Clara froze. The door to the VIP meeting room was slightly ajar. Laughter echoed from inside, Daniel's friends. Then came a voice that made her blood run cold. "We really did it. He married that girl." I thought Daniel was joking. But damn, he actually went through with it. All that for $2 million bucks. Another voice chimed in. And the way he held her hand at the altar, man. I thought he was really in love. "You're the best actor ever. Bro." Clara stood still. Her fingers clenched the warm porridge container tightly. A single drop fell onto the marble floor. She wasn't sure if it was rain or a tear. She said nothing, just turned around. Every step felt like lead. Back in the room, she opened her suitcase. There weren't many belongings, but each piece held a memory, a fragment of the life she'd built since her parents passed. She folded everything neatly. Then she reached for a piece of paper and began to write. When Daniel returned, the room was empty. On the vanity table, there was only a letter and a small gift box. He opened the letter. The handwriting was rough, but calm. "Daniel, thank you for teaching me a lesson. Not about love, but about self-respect. I'm not angry, nor do I blame you. Everyone has their reasons for becoming cruel. But I can't stay. Not because I'm hurt, but because I want to keep whatever little I have left of my own dignity. There's one thing you never asked. Why would a girl like me agree to marry a man like you after only 3 weeks? The answer lies inside the little box next to this note. I wish you happiness. Clara. Asterisk. Daniel opened the box. Inside was an old photograph. Taken during a storm 10 years ago. A little girl holding up a woman who had fainted, his mother. Next to it, a signed organ donor consent form from Clara. And a letter from the hospital's chief doctor. Daniel's vision blurred. Outside, the sky remained gray, but inside him, something had completely shattered. Daniel sat motionless at the edge of the bed. The photo in his hand trembled with each breath he took. In the image was Clara, not in the mocked wedding dress, but as a young girl, her eyes wide with fear in the pouring rain, holding a soaked woman in her arms, his mother. The doctor's letter that came with it confirmed the truth. Clara was the one who had rushed Daniel's mother to the hospital 10 years ago when she collapsed from a stroke at the market. If it weren't for that little girl, his mother wouldn't be alive today. And the organ donor card? Clara had quietly signed it when she was just 16. No one had asked her to. No one even knew. But she had left it all inside that small box, like a silent choice of her own making. Daniel felt the world collapse around him. Every word spoken the night before became daggers. He had married her because of a bet. And yet, she had once saved his mother's life. He had made her the punchline of a joke. But she had preserved the heartbeat of his family. Blank. Underscore. Blank. He dashed to the hotel lobby and questioned the receptionist. Clara had left early that morning. Taken a taxi out to the suburbs. No phone number. No additional note. Daniel jumped into his car. Speeding down the streets. His eyes bloodshot. Memory fragments hit him like waves. Her gently draping a coat over his shoulders when he was drunk. Her patiently peeling apples for his cold, dismissive mother. Her shy words. I don't need gifts. Just let me cook for you. He had never really cared. Never asked if she was tired. Never truly held her hand. And now, all he wanted was to see her one more time. Blank. Underscore. Blank. In the countryside, at a moss-covered tiled house where Clara had lived with her blind adoptive grandmother. Daniel arrived soaked from the rain. The old woman sat by the door and spoke calmly. She's not here. She left me some money this morning. Said she was going somewhere far, where no one knows who she is. Daniel dropped to his knees, gripping the old woman's hands tightly. I was wrong. I hurt Clara. Please, tell me where she went. The old woman gave a faint, knowing smile. If your heart is real, you'll find your way to her. Clara doesn't need a rich man. She only needs someone honest enough to see past beauty, past ego. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Daniel returned to the villa where the wedding had taken place. He entered his office, opened his laptop, and combed through security footage, photo albums, any clue that might lead to her. Then he remembered, Clara had once said, If there's anywhere I go when I'm sad, it's the old lake. The one with the wooden bridge I used to sit at every Sunday morning. No hesitation. He left. Left behind the work, the phone, the reputation, all the things he used to think were everything. Blank. Underscore. Blank. 3 days later, at a quiet lake in the south, beneath the weathered wooden bridge, Clara sat silently, tossing small stones into the water. A beige scarf draped lightly across her shoulders. She wasn't sad anymore, just empty. Soft footsteps approached from behind. She turned. Daniel was there. No suit, no luxury car, just a man with tear-filled eyes and a voice hoarse from searching. I came to say I'm sorry. She looked at him, her gaze still quiet. And to thank you for saving my mother. And for saving the part of me I thought I'd buried. Clara said nothing. She turned back to the lake and finally spoke, barely above a whisper. Love doesn't need apologies. It needs truth. And the truth, sometimes, is only enough to know who will stay and who will walk away. Daniel knelt beside her, gently took her hand. Not for show, not for a crowd, not for a game. Only 2 empty hands and 1 wounded heart. I'll wait, even if you don't forgive me. But if I ever get the chance, I want to start over. Not from that wedding day, but from the day you saved my mother. I owe you my life. Clara turned to him, her eyes red, but this time, not from pain. It was because she had finally seen light at the very bottom of despair. She nodded, a small, quiet nod, like forgiveness, like a door, never truly locked, slowly opening again. Clara and Daniel's love story didn't end by the lake that day. In truth, it had only just begun, amid ruins. From the broken pieces gathered with sincerity and remorse. From 2 people who were no longer the mocked bride at the wedding. Nor the arrogant millionaire who won a bet. Daniel kept his word. He didn't beg for forgiveness. But he did everything he could to make amends. He turned down a multi-million-dollar project and stepped back to run a charity named the Clara Foundation, a place helping rural girls learn a trade, live with dignity, and be protected from the judgmental stares Clara once endured. Every morning, he brewed coffee himself for Clara's adoptive grandmother. He took her to the hospital, helped her with physical therapy, and listened to her stories from long ago. He didn't need approval. He just needed a chance to do something right. No matter how small. Clara saw it all from a distance. She didn't forgive easily, but she also no longer held anger. Because pain, if heard, can dissolve like rain off old rooftops after a storm. Blank. Underscore. Blank. December came. The air turned cold. Clara returned to her small countryside home to pack. She was about to travel to Thailand for a program in ethnic costume design, a scholarship she was nominated for after personally sewing a wedding dress for a disabled bride that no other tailor would take on. The story went viral, and people began calling her the girl who mends dreams. While closing her suitcase, Clara came across a handkerchief, light gray, with embroidered initials, CD. A gift from Daniel, the first after their reunion. There were no love notes. No roses. Just uneven stitches, clumsily done by Daniel himself. Like a child learning to sew for the first time. Clara laughed, not bitterly this time. She knew he had never sewn before. But he picked up a needle and thread, patiently learning from her grandmother, just to give her something no one else could make for him. Blank. Underscore. Blank. That evening, Clara received an invitation from Daniel, not to a 5-star hotel. Not a grand banquet. Just a note. If you're free, come to where we first met, the porridge stall at the end of the street. 7 p.m. She went. The air was crisp. He was already there, waiting beside a hot bowl of porridge. No wine. No expensive suit. Just the same man, with cold hands, offering a small ring. I'm not proposing, he said. I just want that if you ever think about loving someone again, you'd let me be the first person you think of. Clara looked at him for a long moment, then nodded, softly, just like the way she nodded on their wedding day, when the whole crowd laughed. But this time, no one laughed, no one mocked, because this wasn't a bet anymore. It was 2 souls, genuine, raw, choosing to walk together from the lowest place possible. Blank. Underscore. blank. 3 years later, they opened a free sewing center for disadvantaged women. Above the entrance was a wooden sign. Every stitch is a scar that heals. Daniel still worked, but no longer in cold boardrooms. He taught basic accounting to young women expelled from school. Clara sat by the sewing machine, smiling with every stitch. Every morning, he brewed tea for her. Every night, she left a warm towel for him after class. They didn't live in luxury. They weren't famous, but they were happy, quietly and steadily, like coarse fabric strengthened by careful stitching. Blank. Underscore. Blank. One day, during a kindness seminar, someone asked Daniel, "What made you change so much? Was it love?" He smiled, looking at Clara sitting in the audience, dressed simply, sketchbook in hand. "No, it was goodness and dignity, because when I lost both, only one person believed I could earn them back. And that person was the one I had hurt the most." The audience erupted in applause. But Clara didn't. She just smiled, as always, because to her, the most magical thing wasn't being forgiven. It was having the ability to forgive. Blank. Underscore. Blank. On a rainy night at year's end, Daniel and Clara sat by the window together. A gentle breeze swayed the curtains. 2 cups of ginger tea rested on the table. He asked, "Do you ever regret forgiving me?" She didn't answer immediately, then said softly, "Yes, but only for the first few seconds. After that, I felt grateful, because if I hadn't forgiven you, I wouldn't have become the woman I am today." Daniel held her hand. No grip, no desperation, just the quiet hand of a man who had once failed, and now learned to love without conditions. Blank. Underscore. Blank. And if anyone ever asks, how did a millionaire end up marrying the ugliest girl in the village? Tell them, because he saw what others didn't. And if they ask, why did she forgive him? Say, because forgiveness isn't about whether they deserve it. It's about whether you deserve peace. Some love stories start as a joke, but if they are real enough, they can end in something truly miraculous.